Hello, everybody. Welcome to stage E of the data storytelling track and our first session on stage E. Please confirm that you can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Just drop a comment in the chat box that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, all right. So for today's class, we're going to be looking at data curation and what it really means, and how what its impact is in your data analysis and data storytelling journey. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen so we can walk through what we have for today. Okay. So what is data curation? It's basically a process of collecting, like we have, we're organizing and managing data to ensure its accuracy, relevance, and usefulness for analysis and decision making. So to simplify this, is basically, so when you want to perform an analysis, first step is when you want to perform analysis, right? You have a problem you're trying to solve, you have a question you're trying to answer, you have a data set you're trying to discover insights from, whatever your starting point is, right? So, but usually there's a goal in mind, there's an endpoint in mind, right? And so when you have a goal in mind, the next step is usually, okay, how can I get the data set to support this goal that I have in mind, right? So that's why the best place to often start with data analysis is identifying a problem that you want to solve, right? So when you identify a problem and you're like, okay, so how do I get data sets to help me with this problem? And that's where data curation comes in, right? So you're curating, you're collecting data, you are it can be a very iterative process because you collect data and then you rate whether this data is sufficient for the problem that you need to solve. You augment the data that you have collected with other data sources. Your data can come from multiple sources. It's not limited to a particular data source, right? And at the end of the beyond collecting, right? You need to manage, you need to ensure that the data you've collected is valid. You need to ensure that it is accurate, it's useful for um your end goal and whatever problem you want to solve. Okay, so what are the steps that are typically involved in data curation? So, like I've said, its first step is data collection. So you can gather data from diverse sources, right? We've already done a bit of web scraping, where we looked at scraping static websites. And then another source of data can be APIs. And you can have sensors, you can have surveys. And so here we can group the data collection, our data sources into like two stages, right? Two types. We have existing collecting data from like existing sources, right? So those existing sources can be like internal to the organization, or they can be like external, like I've said, not controlled by you. So you don't really have control over the data and how it's generated, but you need to make use of it. And then we can also have data that you plan and you curate yourself. You get so you identify, like I said, you identify a problem and you realize, okay, there's no. How many times have you probably had a problem in mind that you want to solve, and then you go on Kaggle, which are some of the places that you can find data sets. You go on Kaggle, you search in Google data sets, right? And then you don't find the data that you want. And sometimes you have to resort to taking a survey online, creating Google Forms and taking a survey because you want to, or how many of us have had to fill forms that people shared online because they were trying to collect data? Sometimes that's the case. And sometimes you have to initiate processes as well because you want to measure a particular process. You have to initiate data collection process because you want to measure something and there was no existing data there. So with organizations, it's very useful that from the get-go, organizations plan for data collection. But if you happen to be in an organization where data collection is not a priority, it's an opportunity for you to design something that um, where you can begin to collect data, right, that supports the organization and which you can use to derive insights that will help you in that organization. Okay. Then the next step is data cleaning. I mean, this is something that we have done consistently across all the stages of this course. You see that at every point we have to do data cleaning. And we've also seen in some of our classes the impact of haphazard like data cleaning, where we thought that we had done something. We had taken out a couple of things from our data set, but it turned out it was still in data set and how that tends to impact the final results that we have. So data cleaning is a very important step, and don't be don't be afraid to like keep doing it over and over. Like it's not a while you're still working on the data before you have reached the final result, you might find yourself having to perform some more cleaning on the data because you're not yet like really satisfied. So it can be an iterative like process, but you want to take your time, inspect the data from all angles and ensure that what you're working with is valid. Data organization. So structuring your data into a logical and manageable format, applying data modeling, normalization, and indexing techniques. So this is really useful if for situations where you want to continuously measure, you want to continuously work with the data that you have curated, that you're curating, right? So like it's not a one-time analysis type of thing. It's something that you want to continuously work, have access to that data and continuously work with it. So in that case, you want to plan for storage systems, you want to plan for um how you're going to organize the data, right? You want to apply some data modeling, how you're going to store the data and all of that. And then next is data storage, which equally is important when you are designing a process that ensures a continuous flow of data. And then data documentation. This is very, very important. So you can work on it because in the course of working with data with machine learning guys, it's typically called feature engineering, right? Where you have a couple of features and then you're like, oh, okay, I want to get more features from these features I have. I would like to combine some features and get an additional feature. And then you can do that, but without proper documentation of what you have done, someone else can pick that up and it makes no meaning to them. Same thing applies here, right? So in the course of doing your validation and cleaning and working with your data, you might come to a point where you need to create some columns based off some other like columns in your data, right? It's important that you have documentation, even if you do not have to create those, even if you don't have to create new data columns, but documentation, particularly about the data you're working with, is very important because it ensures that someone else can pick this up and doesn't have to spend some time struggling to figure out what certain like columns within your data set represent, right? They don't need to struggle to understand what your data is really about because there's already like a dictionary. There are some websites that when you try to get data from them, they have a dictionary defining, oh, this is what this column, and it's very easy to work with, okay? But then when it's a struggle, it can lead to a lot of waste of time and all that. All right, so moving on. For this class, we'll be looking at retrieving. One of the sources we'll be working with is APIs, right? So like APIs are API basically is application programming interface, and it provides a structured way for applications to request and receive data from other applications or services. So basically, apps need to communicate with other apps, right? So software services need to communicate with other software services, and APIs are the ways that we do that. One common example in the industry for describing APIs is like when you go to a restaurant and are a you are a client, a customer, right? That just got into a restaurant and you want to order some food. You get to talk with the server, the waiter, right? You don't get to talk with the cook or the chef behind. So the chef is like the powerhouse, the software service, what is providing the service, right? But the waiter is like the API. So that's what you get to communicate with. You don't get to query someone's database or whatever data storage they are using. What you get to work with is the API that they provide to you. Okay. So APIs can be used to provide a wide range of services. For this, we're going to be working with some, we're going to be looking at the movies data, the movies website, movies database, right? And that's the API we're going to be working with. Then getting started with APIs. So when you need to work with APIs, one thing that you want to do is you want to explore the documentation, right? So if you are lucky enough and the API you're working with has good documentation, then good for you. So you want to explore that, save yourself some time. If you're also lucky enough, some APIs, they provide you with like good examples of how you can use the API. So that makes your work a lot easier, right? And then some APIs have some require some form of authentication. So remember when we did web scraping, in the example that we did, we didn't need to do any authentication, although there are sometimes that we need to scrape certain websites and we will not be able to access resources from those websites because they are protected. Those resources are protected resources, and the website typically requires authentication. So same thing with an API, even though the API's primary like responsibilities to provide us with data, sometimes that data is hidden behind like a login page or something. And so it requires that, okay, we need to authenticate first. For APIs, one of the ways that we authenticate is we can use an API key. Like I said, so the website will give us a key that we will use to record whenever we send a request in our request headers, it will recognize that key and it will grant us access to whatever resource that we want. And another thing too is, okay, so we've talked about authentication required by some APIs, and then the Python library that we can use for working with APIs, it's similar to what we used for web scraping. So we need the request library to send our request. And then depending on the format of our response, the format of the data, because it can take a couple of formats, right? So I've listed some here, JSON, XML, and some even give us in CSV formats, right? So or tab separated like formats, right? So that's also another type of format that our data can come in. And so if we have data that comes in those formats, you will now need to use the appropriate library to pass those the data that you've received, right? Pass the response that you've received. So that's about, I'm sorry I've taken a bit of time walking us through this, but it's important that we understand the usefulness of APIs. Like I said, curating, collecting data is not limited to APIs. We've introduced it to web scraping, and here we're introducing you to APIs. There is also the other option of collecting data yourself, tracking data yourself. So like I said, you can create forms. You're interested in something, you can literally create a form and share it with people, have them answer questions, and that becomes like the data that you work with, right? Okay, so like I said, we'll be working with this. Created this strictly for the purpose of this. And so this is a movie database that provides us with like data on the movies. So we'll just be exploring this and see what we have. So like I said, first thing you want to do when you are working with an API is you want to explore the documentation. So we take a look at the documentation. And one thing we can do is just go to the API references. Then you can take a look at authenticating. I mean, typically, right, okay, so I'll go back. So with authentication, right, is if the retrieval of your data is part of like your software process, it's not advisable at all to expose this. So I'm doing this here. Everyone can see my API key, but I don't mind because it's not going to, I mean, doesn't have much impact on me, right? So, but then it's never advisable to like when you get an API key that you're working with, you don't want to, and you guys, we tend to push code to GitHub, right, so you don't want to expose things like that. Those are secrets that you want to keep safe. So it's very important. You do not want to expose things like API keys because people can get it, work with it, send multiple requests in your name, and you get blocked. And the next time you pick that API key to work with, and you are wondering, why am I getting a 429? Why is my request? Why am I why can't I access anything? You don't know that you exposed it and someone else picked it up and worked with it, right? So that's one thing that can happen. So if you come on this website, you will see I'm already signed in, as you can see. So that's why, and I already have my access token. But if you get on here, you sign in, you get an access token. So there are a couple of endpoints that are available here. So we have things that we can get, things that we need to send details to as well. So if we want to add a favorite, we're actually going to be sending data. This one is we're going to be receiving data if we interact with this, right? So we're going to try a couple of them and just see what it looks like. So let's see. Okay, so looking for discover, right? Okay, so this is it. So it tells us we get to find movies using over 30 filters and sort options. So let's try this. Let's experiment with this. So then we have some information on how this works. So we get a chance to try this out. And this is the URL. So these are like query parameters, right? So this is a get request As you can see here, we are requesting for a resource from the website. We are literally sending a request. So we are getting stuff from them. And then these are the query parameters that are included in our URL. So like whenever you see URL separated with this and the rest of this in this key value pair form, together with all the rest of, look at this, include adult cost false, and then these are all query params that we have introduced to our URL. So these are the things that we want our results to be filtered by, okay? So let's go ahead and try this and see what we have. So we see the first page and we see some results. We see an ID, we see original language, original title, popularity, release date as well. I see if there's video, we see video to be false because that's what we said, that's what we requested for. We see language to be this, right? Because that's what we requested for as well. And then we see our page to be page 1, right? So we can come here and try to see some things, try to play around with some things and see what we have. So we get the data for page 2, right? So we see that the name has changed from something apes to the Batman. And then we can also try, we see our release date. We can also try to come here and just play around and see how this impacts. If you're unclear about like what these things mean, do a search here and you figure out, the documentation will lead you to what you need to figure out, right? So let's try some things here. Okay, so we can see our date now. Release date is 2020, according to our release year, right? So now we are sorting by popularity description, I think. Yeah, there's a metric for popularity basically. How it's calculated, I'm not sure. But I think that's what it is. Oh, sorry. Popularity descending. I'm sorry. Yes, that's what that is. So then we can decide we want it to be popularity ascending. We try a couple of things. So however you want it to be, right? And we see that we are starting from the very least in terms of popularity. So however, whatever filters you want to work with, you can work with that. And if you want to, you can also try to see what countries or what languages are covered. So in case you don't want to work with English, you're interested in some other language, you can try out this first to get a sense of what is provided, right? So you try this out, see what is provided. So here we see that there's not a lot of parameters that we need to include in our query. So this is just a rather straightforward query, right? So You just get to now working with this from this point is not easy, right? So working with your results from this point, this is meant to just give you an overview, a quick view of, okay, this is what I want to work with. This is what I am looking at working with, right? So the best place to work with this from is, I mean, it's time to go to our script and try to interact with it from that point, right? So I'll do that. And you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Not yet. I don't know if it's my internet.
Okay. Let me stop and share. Give me a minute, guys. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have this currently working from VS Code. So first, like I said, I put a guide up here, but then we have the URL we want to work with. So we'll go back. I will have to reshare so that I can alternate between screens.
So please, I have a question.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
in relation to the project we're supposed to do, from the two websites provided, we're just supposed to perform web scraping on it.
For this stage, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry. I'll take a look at the website. I'm not sure that. What's the specification of the project, please?
So we've been provided with two websites, Amazon and Coca-Cola.
Okay. Okay. Yes. 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 You're supposed to. You're supposed to scrape those websites. I mean, if there is, because like for some websites, right, you get in trying to scrape, but then you realize that, oh, they have an API that is available to the general public to use, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that can be the case. So if that is available, then you can go ahead and use that. Otherwise, you're expected to scrape, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So now you can see my screen and I can alternate. Okay. So basically, I want us to we're working with this the Discover Movies endpoint. I have my header. Basically, let me go back here so that you will see what this is about. It's not a lot that I've done here. Just like I said, look at, so some websites, they make things very easy because they want you to use their APIs, right? So they've provided like examples on how to use it for the various languages, right? For Shell, right? And then for Python. So you can just copy this. It is your API key that will be here. So you just copy this and paste it and see I have this. Now, if I go ahead and include some parameters, right? At this point, the only parameter that is included here is this include adult false, include video false, language, all of these things that are included by like sort of default, right? I haven't included any year or anything like that. So I showed you how we can do that. I can as well just copy the URL like it is, right? copy it and come and use it the way it is with the query params included in the URL. Or I can go a much better route. I can specify those parameters in, like I'm doing here. I can specify them in a dictionary and then pass them into the get function. Okay, so I've specified what I want as key value pairs in the dictionary, basically included adult for all of this. I've included the year I want our data to be filtered for. And then basically what I've done here, just like you do in web scraping, same thing, right? Send a request with the headers here. That's just the only different thing that we've done. So we included headers, which we've already defined, included params, which we have defined here. So if I run this and I do a response status code check, so things are in order. Let's say that I mess with my system. Let's see what kind of response we will get. See? So it's very important that whatever you're working with is actually the API key that you got from them. So, okay, moving on. Moving on, right? So I can access, I know that the data that I'm going to be retrieving from here is coming in a JSON format. So I can basically access it with this. Okay. So I access it and then I see, because I did not specify any new pages. So there are some default query parameters like we've seen already that it's assumed. So one of it is the page, that the very first page is going to return is page 1, obviously. So that's what is happening here. And then we get a sense of the total pages that we have, the total results. So I can store this in a variable data, post this, then I go ahead to take a look. Okay, there's no need. I already have something doing that below. So data keys. So I take a look at the data keys that we have, and then I try to, let's see total. We interact with our data and just try to see what's available. So total results, that's the number of movies that our query or that our movie database is giving to us. But then how many is on a page? So we know that, let's see, let's just interact with all the keys and see what they are returning. So I know that that's page 1. Then results. So result, but somehow not, we don't have the full, I don't even want to see the full results. There's no point to that. Let's just take a look at the length, the number of, so about 20 results are actually returned in page 1. And so what is now the total pages that we want to, that we're working with? Did I miss something? Yes, I need to. Okay, so we have about 1,695 pages that we'll have to get to get our complete results, right? So we can work with a function that gets data from a single page. This is where your Python skills come to play. So here I've defined what the response will be. I've defined the query params. But let's do this from scratch, right? And just see. Let's walk through this together and just see how we can. So we already know that we want to send a request to a certain URL. So that's the advantage of separating your query params from the URL. So you get to make changes to the parameter that you enter, and the URL just stays the same. That's one advantage. In case you're wondering why, what's the point? That's one of the advantage. Okay. So because I'm going to be changing the page number, though I didn't include it here. Let me include it so you see how things change when I'm not sure. Let's go back to the site and see if it's okay to assume that it's an integer. So I will keep that as an integer. Okay, so we can see that our results, this response is giving us page 2, right? So what we are really interested in is actually the results. This is what we are interested in. Okay, this is what we are hoping to get. So what I'm going to just do here is specify the headers. Then we want to retrieve, let's just copy some things and put here. We want to retrieve okay, no, let's not use this. Better to just access the JSON that is available. Then okay, so we can specify our URL within here because we know our URL does not change. Then for our params, right, we can specify that as well. Or better still, we can pass that in here as an argument to this function. Okay, so that we define it outside of the function. Okay, so and I still need to copy that. Let's copy that. So we can say that for let's run through the first 10 pages, right? Let's run through the first 10 pages. So if everything we've done is working fine, since one page gives us 20 results, 20 times 10 should give us 200, right? So let's see what we have. Let's see what we have if we run through the first 20 pages, right? For page in So basically what we're doing here is just let me keep this at 1. So let's see, one thing that's missing is that, I need to quickly wrap this up. One thing that is missing, I'll limit this to 5 just to save time because the speed is important as well. So one thing that is missing is the final point where our data is going to be stored. So far, as you work with Python, sometimes you find that, oh, you're storing data in lists, right? You're storing them in dictionary storage, right? So persistence of storage is basically beyond, because when this session is lost, right? If I close this VS Code now and come back, I will not find that list. You rerun things to get back like what you were working with. Okay. So let's say that I don't want that to happen. Okay. I want to persist things. Then you can resort to using some storage options. You can store them in files. So even if you close this, you've already written a file to your hard disk. It's not going to go away. Okay. For this case, let's start small. Let's just results. Okay, let's do that. And then so that this will get appended to, this is returning a dictionary. So let's not do appending. Let's do extending. Hopefully, let's see. Let's see what we have. Yeah, I'm going to stop this and just include login because so we have, oh, I said I wanted 5, but then okay, that's fine. So we should be expecting 80 results. Let's see what we have. Okay, so things are looking good. So this is very straightforward, right? I got the chance to work with, got the chance to specify the year, got the chance to specify the language, even specified how you want to sort this. Is this sorting by, right? May not be very, it's not very useful to be honest, because I mean, it depends on what you want to do anyway, but here, because we will be doing a lot of manipulation and we could easily just sort the data if that's what we want from this point. So this, except maybe this was a case of me taking this data and feeding it into another service, and I want it to come out sorted already. I'm not going to be doing any form of manipulation in between. Yeah, this is a great use case for that. So, but then this is what we have, and it's really very straightforward. Retrieving data from APIs is very straightforward. So you get to manipulate all of this depending on whatever you want to do, right? So you get to specify this. So I would suggest that you guys take a look at the movies database and sign up and try to curate data like how you, for whatever scenario that you have in mind, just for practice. So that's what I would suggest, guys. So, but yeah, this is what we have. And like I said, I think it's pretty straightforward. Any questions? We'll be stopping here for today. Any questions, guys? No questions.
Here's a question.
Okay.
Uh, so how do we get, are we going to get VS Code file or something to be able to, or we're going to get it
Python
later.
script. Yeah,
Yeah,
later.
later.
But then I don't even think, yes, it gets later. It's a Jupyter notebook anyway, but I'm just running it from VS Code. But you can, I don't think this is that difficult, especially if you go through the video. So you
Yeah.
can literally do this on your own, right?
Okay, sure.
Without me sharing the notebook. Okay. So, all right. Any other questions? All right, guys. First, I want to commend you guys for coming this far. I see that it's not the same number of people that were here, like at the start of the course that are here, but you guys have stayed on to this point. So well done. Well, big kudos to you guys. So we'll meet in our next session. So have a lovely day, guys. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.